Hi, so welcome everybody. This is our lunch and learn that is on illegal money lending. I'm Kim. For anybody that doesn't know me, I head up the local care partnership development team, and this is one of our series of lunch and learn webinars. Really happy to be joined by Trish Cassidy today. I've heard Trish in one of our local care partnerships talking about this subject already. It's a really interesting subject, and I know normally we get lots of interest and questions from people. If you do have any questions throughout the webinar, then pop them into the chat and we can pick those up after Trish has done her presentation. But I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm just going to pop myself on mute and hand straight over to you, Trish.
Lovely, thanks very much, Kim. So yes, my name is Trish. I'm a local liaison officer for the England Illegal Money Lending team, and I cover the Leeds area. On the slides today, what we're going to be talking about this afternoon is loan sharks, illegal money lenders, unlicensed lenders. I may use all three terminologies to mean ultimately the same thing. From my point of view, however, it's really important that we also talk about the victims behind this crime. Therefore, I may make reference throughout the session this afternoon to various forms of abuse, including self-harm and sexual assault, as well as reference to different types of mental health, including self-harm and suicide. So this is just a reminder and a call out to please be mindful of your own well-being. If you ever need to contact me at any stage, please do so, and do seek support from your colleagues or your managers, should that be appropriate. So let's start off with, well, what actually is a loan shark? I'm quite sure if I asked you all to picture and vision a loan shark, many of you would have quite a set image in mind. The actual definition of a loan shark is anybody who lends money in the course of a trade or business without the correct permission from the Financial Conduct Authority. So it actually isn't about how much interest that individual is or is not charging. It doesn't have anything to do with, are they making threats and what extent are those threats? It is simply a question of, do they have the correct permission to lend? And that permission is from the Financial Services and Marketing Act 2012. There's a really simple way of checking whether somebody does have permission to lend, and that's by using the FCA register. The web address is on the screen now, and that is a free website that anybody can access. All you would need to do is pop in there the name of the individual or organisation who you have suspicions about, and it will confirm if they are indeed licensed to lend money. And in case you're thinking, well, obviously Bob down the pub is not going to be on that FCA register, we will come on to look at different types of loan sharks. And increasingly, we are seeing those loan sharks posing as legitimate lenders. So it is a website that's just worth keeping in mind. The team that I work for, the England Illegal Money Lending team, is a team of two halves. So we have two distinct roles. One is to stop that loan shark, to arrest them, to prosecute them, to prevent them from carrying out and reaching new customers. And that is largely down to our enforcement team. So we have our own financial investigators, we have our own seconded police officer, intelligence and solicitor staff. The team that I work on is the liaise team. So there are 16 officers such as myself dotted all across the country. Our role is to deliver awareness raising sessions such as this and training, but also primarily to support individuals who have borrowed from a loan shark. Quite often, by the time somebody reaches us for support, they often have quite a wide range of other issues and vulnerabilities that are presenting, particularly as a result of that loan shark situation. So the team, part of my role is really just looking after that individual and giving them all the support that they need. We often get asked, how do you spot a loan shark? Now, in an ideal world, all loan sharks would look like my little cartoon character there with his rather mysterious looking balaclava and his SWAT bag. But the reality is we have prosecuted loan sharks from every walk of life. 1 in 4 of the prosecutions we did last year were of females. We had arrests of loan sharks who were over 75 years old last year, multiple loan sharks over that age. And the prosecutions that we have had range from self-employed, unemployed to business people alike. To try and evidence the different types of loan sharks, I've included here a few different types of personas. Most loan sharks will fall into one of these types of categories, and across Leeds and beyond, in different parts of the city, there will be different types of loan sharks operating in different ways. So there is still very much the community lender. That tends to be the male or female known locally on estates as the person to go to if you are short of money. They often come recommended by family or friends or other people within that community. We hear of loan sharks promoting their business in places such as school playgrounds. So using their own children or grandchildren to work out which other kids at school always have jam in their packed lunches, which other children never get to go on school trips. And that loan shark will then make it their business to befriend that individual, that family, so that when the inevitable conversation of money crops up, they're well placed to step in and present themselves as an answer to that problem. We also hear of community loan sharks targeting food banks, for instance, so encouraging people, don't go in there to get whatever box or bag of goods that you will be given. I can just lend you some money instead and get yourself off to the supermarket. And they very much rely typically on that befriending behaviour. That loan shark is likely to be very, very pleasant to their customers while they are paying in time on full every month. We even hear of these community loan sharks buying selection boxes for their customers' children at Christmas, Easter eggs at Easter. And that's part of this psychological development and grooming approach of convincing that person, I'm your friend, I'm helping you out. That sort of community lender is happening on estates all across Leeds at present. We then see business lending, and there are a few different elements to this. So we have had prosecutions of legitimate businesses, such as greengrocers, off-licence takeaways, who have a legitimate presence. And it might start off with goods on tick. So if they can see that somebody's debating, have I got enough money to get this pack of nappies and this box of formula? They might say, oh, don't put them back. If you're a bit short, just pay me on Friday. And then that can lead on to adding on interest to that tab and also offering cash loans under the counter. Another type of business lending we are increasingly seeing is parallel lending. So that is where legitimate finance credit companies are agents who work for those are knocking on the same doors and offering loans, but out of their own pocket rather than that company. So it might be that somebody thinks I owe money to Provident because it's a Provident collector who's knocking on my door. Now, Provident haven't actually been able to offer regulated loans for several years now. But as an instance, ex-agents from Provident who have always covered those areas may still be offering their own loans instead. And we also see an increase of loan sharks just posing as though they are a legitimate lender. So if I was a loan shark, instead of me saying, hi, I'm Trish, I'm a loan shark, I'm going to make your life a misery, I might promote myself as Trish's Loans PLC. I might promote on social media or put up a sign in my local shop window, takeaway, post office, that kind of thing. In some scenarios, for those instances, that loan shark may even provide some form of paperwork. Most loan sharks don't. Typically, there will not be any receipts, any affordability checks, or any written contract, but a small amount of those business lending will include that. We're also seeing an increase of loan sharks operating online and using different types of online platforms to reach new customers. So that could be dating websites or gambling websites, for instance, utilising the chat rooms in those sites to get to know and groom new customers. We also see loan sharks targeting different ethnic minorities using social media. So WhatsApp groups, Facebook Messenger groups of people who share some sort of commonality. And within that group, that could be considered a safe place for people to ask about jobs, work, money, housing. And increasingly, there could be a loan shark posed in that group. And because that loan shark has something in common with those members of that group, again, it's breaking down those barriers and allowing that individual to think, this person's trying to help me. And what that does is gives that loan shark a greater geographical reach. So rather than the community lender, who probably has customers 1 to 3 mile radius of their house, the online lender has the ability to have customers hundreds and hundreds of miles away. And in those scenarios, we are increasingly seeing loan sharks using banking as a means of sending and receiving those payments rather than it being via the cash. We do have loan sharks that are linked to other types of criminality, including different forms of crime gangs. In those scenarios, that victim may be seen as a commodity. So if they cannot afford to make the repayments at the amount that the loan shark is requesting, that individual may then be forced into things such as human trafficking or prostitution, growing or selling drugs on behalf of that loan shark, or collecting debts on their behalf. And those are all sadly examples that we have seen occur. Some loan sharks will also pretend that the money did not ever come from them. So actually, yes, I lent you that money, but that wasn't ever mine, it was my boss's. So giving this impression that somehow that customer now owes money to this mythical character, this elusive name who you don't want to mess with, again, is another approach that we do see in the illegal lending world. And the final type is workplace lending. So this can come across where it may appear that individual just owes money to their colleague or to their boss at work. However, 1 in 5 of the loan shark victims who we supported last year met their lender at work. We had a prosecution a few years ago of a top London consultant within the NHS who was a loan shark giving loans to migrant nurses at his hospital, and he made around £500,000 in doing so. So it's keeping an eye out for anybody who may talk about money that they owe to their boss or to their colleague. If that person is charging interest and lending money to multiple other people, that would actually be considered a loan shark. And in those scenarios, the risk and the fear typically is more about people at work finding out or risk of losing their job. So in those different scenarios, that individual's journey and also how they talk about that person really will be quite different. There are a few red flags to keep an eye out for. Typically, if somebody has had a loan that seemed too good to be true, it probably was. So if somebody has been offered a loan without any affordability checks, credit reference checks, identification checks, then again, that should be an alarm bell that that is not a legitimate form of credit. If repayments are by cash or casual arrangements into somebody's personal bank account rather than a business account, then again, that is cause for concern. Some loan sharks ask for security by means of bank cards, passports, driver's license, or valuable, sometimes often sentimental valued items. So families, heirlooms, wedding rings, things like that. Again, a legitimate company would not request such things. If people are experiencing debts that just do not seem to be coming down despite repayments, or the amounts being repaid seem unreasonable, it's definitely worth checking that FCA register again and ensuring that they are actually legitimate. And certainly no organisation that is registered should be threatening an individual who is struggling to repay. So where that is, an individual is being bullied in any way, harassed about those repayments, maybe threatened in some capacity, then again, it definitely is something that we would encourage to look beyond. Typically, other things that you might be able to look out for, those signs, are individuals who seem particularly anxious about, particularly when it comes to money, they're afraid and are isolating themselves, quite withdrawn, and having a significant lack of access to cash, particularly if you know that they are receiving the benefits that they're entitled to, or they are earning a regular income, understanding perhaps why is it that they don't have enough money for food or basics. And if somebody doesn't have access to their own documentation, their own passports, again, considering could that be a loan shark situation there. Depending on that type of loan shark, the threats that they use to control and coerce that individual will vary. And on screen now are some examples of different types of threats that our victims have experienced, and this was just in the last few months of last year. So you can see it is not always about physical violence. It is not always about me threatening you, the customer. That threat may come in the way of your family, your friends, your pets. It could be a cultural or a religious threat, such as the witchcraft scenario. In different communities, it can be this idea of bringing shame and dishonour to your family name. The idea of your family finding out, your partner finding out, your community finding out that A, you're in debt, maybe that you're paying interest, which can often be quite taboo, or that you are, owing money to a loan shark. Some loan sharks will just prey on the guilt element. So, relying on this idea of, well, actually, if you don't pay me back, how am I going to give poor Mrs. Jones her loan? And she's got children or grandchildren to look after. And again, for different customers, those different types of threat will apply. Out of the individuals who we supported, last year, just under half last year genuinely thought that that person was their friend when they took out that loan. So they did not think I'm getting into debt with a loan shark. They thought this is my friend, my neighbour, my colleague, somebody I know in my community who are helping me out. Most of them were recommended by somebody that they know and trust. And we have seen victims under the age of 18 being offered loans by loan sharks. The eldest victim who we supported last year was 91 years old. So just imagine at 91 owing money to an illegal lender. And half of the individuals who we supported last year made a transaction to that loan shark via their bank account. So it is a really good opportunity for us, because then we can investigate that individual based on their banking without the need to have regular contact with that victim if they do wish to do so. The impacts of people who owe money to illegal lending do spread into a range of areas. So 60% of victims went without food or fuel. So the repayments to that loan shark were so high that they did not have enough money to be able to keep themselves or their families fed and warm. Typically, victims max out on legal credit as well. So if they do have access to overdraft facilities or credit card facilities, for instance, then again, those are likely to be impacted as well. Mental health is a big concern, as well as physical disabilities. So significant percentage of our victims experience additional health vulnerabilities, with 30% of victims contemplating suicide and 17% making actual attempts on their own life. So getting to the point where they genuinely believe the only way I am going to be free of this debt, of this situation, is if I am no longer here. And again, that's really why we are looking to try and raise as much awareness as we possibly can about this issue and about the support that the illegal money lending team can offer, so that victims know there is an alternative. And the highest rate of interest we have seen is 4.5 million% APR, which I think is just really difficult to get your head around how that is even possible. I'll give you an example of a local case at the moment, and that's an individual who borrowed £500 at the start of the month, and just after payday, at the end of the month, repays back £1,000. So that's what's known as double bubble, quite a popular terminology in the loan shark world. However, because they have just handed over £1,000 of their minimum wage income, are now short of money to get through the next month, and therefore have to borrow that same £500 again. And this individual has so far borrowed and repaid this same £500, but being charged £500 every month for doing so for over 7 years. So has today repaid over £42,000 and still cannot get through that month without having to reborrow. 17% of our victims have borrowed from that loan shark on more than 10 occasions. As a result, once they start, it can be very, very difficult to get out of that trap. The impact is far-reaching, so as I've discussed, it is not just about the finances. Yes, there is a very good chance that person will be behind on their rent, their utilities, their council tax. They will quite likely have other debts outstanding as well, probably presenting with quite poor mental and physical health, which may present as neglect, and often could be as a direct link of that illegal lending, but also that feeds into other areas as well. So into their social life, where their relationships may have broken down because that person has not even told their partner that they owe money to a loan shark. Children are impacted sometimes directly, so threats made against that child, following that child home from school, things like that. But also children who are witnessing their parents be threatened, harmed, or abused. And even where that's not the case, children who are just going without, they're making sacrifices, going without things because their parents are having to prioritise payments to an illegal lender. It also has impacts on wider community and services. So typically where a community loan shark is operating, that area is likely to have increased antisocial behaviour, an over-reliance on food banks, and additional strain on other local services as well. As you can see here, there are some examples of testimonials and quotes from individuals who have reached us for support. And we do have a whole range of case studies on our website and our YouTube channels as well. So if you have a moment, please do take a look on there. In terms of how big an issue is this, particularly within Leeds, it is estimated that 2% of the population are currently using a loan shark. Now that equates to 16,000 people in Leeds. And just to put that into context a little, the government estimates that 0.5% of the population are impacted by problem gambling, which means that you are 4 times more likely to come across somebody who owes money to a loan shark than you are somebody who has a gambling issue. In Leeds specifically, we do have several ongoing investigations. Investigations are where we receive a piece of information that can be quite general. So there's a loan shark called Sarah in Hare Hills, for instance. Now that's still very useful for us. It's not enough for us to be able to investigate, but it is useful for me as a liaison officer to be able to say, okay, I need to dedicate some resource to Hare Hills, for instance, particularly if we can narrow that down to a series of streets or a smaller patch. We have lots of that incidents going. We also have several ongoing investigations. Investigations are where we have specific information about a named loan shark and we are carrying out different types of research to be able to build up evidence with a view to hopefully making an arrest. Do have particular concerns in Leeds at the moment for migrant communities, partially due to the fact that hopefully by the end of this you can understand that this can be quite a complex matter. It's not necessarily an easy thing to identify for a partner to identify or for that individual themselves. And it can also be quite tricky to work out who we are and how we can support them. Because let's be honest, who's heard of the illegal money lending team? We're not exactly a household brand. So we do have a range of materials and resources, posters, flyers, leaflets, giant sharks, various things like that. But they typically are currently all in English. So I'm very concerned about looking at different opportunities to get those messages to reach those people for whom English is not their first language. And we do now have a range of new resources that we've just finalised a project on. So if that is something that would be of interest to you, please let me know. Also have concerns for links to private lettings agencies and landlords in the area as well. So individuals who are perhaps in rent arrears and their landlord is then offering them a loan to clear those rent arrears. And that loan is also from the landlord, or encouraging that tenant's family to take a loan from them in order to clear those arrears as well, and links to private lettings agencies. So we're all aware that there is quite a massive demand and housing challenges at the moment across Leeds, with people quite desperately looking for properties. If they are told that they need a sizable amount of money for a bond or rent up front, there is a risk that a loan shark may use that as an opportunity to step in and appear to be offering help with that. And it's much more likely that a victim is going to approach somebody, an organisation, partner organisation, for support on something else before they ever hear about us. Because it does take, on average, just under 3 years for somebody to get in touch with our team. And that's very much a journey. It can take months, if not years, for that person to realise that the person they're repaying is not just their friend, their colleague, their neighbour. They're not a legitimate company. They are, in fact, a loan shark. And usually at the point that somebody has identified that, they are often of the opinion the best thing to do is just keep repaying. Usually there is a trigger. There will be something that will happen that will make them think, I need some help here. But again, people don't know where to turn for that help. So it can take quite a while for them to come across our service. And even when they do, they're probably not sure what we're going to do, how we're going to help, what we're going to ask, have reservations about whether they're going to be in trouble. Is the loan shark going to find out they've spoke to us? All of those kind of concerns. So that all put together is taken on average 3 years. So if we can work together to raise that awareness, get those messages out there and hopefully bring down that time, because during those 3 years, that individual is likely to have had contact with a whole range of different services for different reasons. And the support that we do have available, we have a 24-hour helpline. So if at 2 o'clock in the morning somebody's just been threatened by a loan shark yet again, or that individual is not sleeping because they're worried about how they're going to make their next payment, they are not on their own. There will be myself or one of our team answering that phone and offering that support. And sometimes people will just ring and have a general chat. They won't disclose information or specific information. And sometimes it can take several phone calls before they feel able and confident to disclose more specifics. If that individual is prepared to talk about where they are, as in, yes, I live in Leeds, the ideal would be for me to have a conversation with that person, either in person, over the phone, online, whichever approach they will prefer, and they do not have to tell me their name. My job at that point is to do a risk and a needs assessment. So to understand what risk are you under and what can we do to mitigate that risk. So we do, for instance, have a safe house. We do not very often have to use it, but it is there. We can arrange for people to be moved out of area if that is necessary. It would take time, but that is something that we can look at. We can put blue light markers on properties. So if there is a call of a disturbance from an address, there will automatically be a blue light police response sent if there is a level of threat that would justify that. It could be that the biggest risk to that individual is them themselves, in which case my first point of call would be to access mental health on their behalf. So to contact the crisis team or health experts and help them to get that side of things resolved. Or it could be a more general need. They may need support with drug issues, alcohol issues, debt issues, housing issues. They may need a food parcel. They may need a fuel voucher. In addition to other roles, part of my work is to make sure that I am linked in with all those sorts of organisations so that I can get that individual whatever help and support they really need. And people can contact us in a range of different ways. So that can be via the 24-hour helpline. We have a live chat function via our website for people who don't feel comfortable actually speaking to us. Anybody can come through myself, or we have an email option as well. There is also the possibility of having money recouped. When we make an arrest, a loan shark's, we put together how much money we think that loan shark has made from being a loan shark, and their assets are then frozen to that value. Depending on the specifics of the case, it might be possible then for us to use some of that money and give back to that victim. However, that is categorically not something we would ever disclose to a victim up front, because there are lots of reasons why that may not be possible. When we do receive information into the team, regardless of what route that comes in from, that's passed to our intelligence team, and it's their job to gather additional information. So if you do hold information about a loan shark or a suspected loan shark, I don't need you to be 100% convinced that that's what it is. That might be a little piece of a puzzle that we already have. But that information, that little piece of a puzzle, will go to the Intel team and they do further checks. Now, if those checks reveal there doesn't look like there's anything here, that suspect will never know that they were being checked at all. So there is no harm in sharing those concerns, because we will not be going and arresting anybody on the back of somebody says they think perhaps this is a loan shark situation. So as part of those investigations, we will consider if it is appropriate to ask a victim if they are willing to give a witness statement. Now, a witness statement is very different to meeting me, having a chat with me, sharing information with me. I can meet somebody a million times and still never ask them for a statement. If they don't provide a statement, then their details will never ever be disclosed anywhere. If a case does go to court and somebody does provide a statement, then that statement will be submitted as evidence. But that is the only scenario where their details could ever be shared. So people can still share lots of information without that ever being the case. Once we have enough information, we apply to the courts for a warrant. That warrant is executed. Most loan sharks plead guilty on the day that they are arrested. If they don't, then there is a court hearing, and that's where potentially that statement might come into play. And after that hearing, that loan shark is then sentenced, and there is the proceeds of crime application as well. There is an exemption in GDPR that allows you to share information about suspected loan sharks with us without any kind of consent, and that is GDPR Part 3 of the Data Protection Act 2018. And put in really simple terms, it means that you don't need consent to share any information about a suspected loan shark. You would need consent to share any information about your victim, so the name of the person who you are supporting. But the other thing that is really useful for myself particularly is the first part of the postcode for where that individual lives, because as I say, that allows us to focus resource in that area, do intense work to make sure that if there are other customers in that vicinity, they too are aware of the support that is available. On screen now are the different options for contacting our team, and we do also have a range of other resources, support and materials available as well. So if you know of an organisation or a department who may benefit from training such as this, then again, please feel free to share my details. We do have a whole range of publicity resources, social media campaigns, toolkits, education packs, and as I say, giant shark mascots. If any of that is of interest, please do get in touch, and we'd be happy to support with those things as well. And just in terms of, we're often asked about alternatives to loan sharks. So we do work quite closely with credit unions, Leeds Credit Union in this instance, as an alternative for people who perhaps are financially excluded and would maybe struggle with that credit rating approach. So it's just keeping that in mind as a potential option. I'm not sure if anybody can ask a question if they did have any, but that is the end of my slide. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Trish. Do we have anybody that does have questions that they'd like to ask Trish? If you want to either pop it in the chat or raise your hand and we'll bring you in. Angela.
Is this just for the Leeds area, or could I sort of share on my social media stoploansharks.co.uk and the number? I can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Angela. Yeah, so I cover Leeds, but I have colleagues who cover, two other colleagues who cover half of West Yorkshire, colleagues in London, colleagues all over. So yes, we're a small team. We work very closely together. So if somebody comes through to the wrong person, we can quite easily make sure that they're put in touch with the right liaison officer. That's for us to concern ourselves with, not you. Anything you can do to raise awareness generally about this issue would be much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? I can see we've got a question in the chat asking whether the slides will be sent round. As long as we've got your details, we can send the slides out to people, but if you've not registered for this webinar, if you've just come in via the link, then we might not have your details, so make sure that one of my team has got your details. The other thing we will be doing, this is recorded, so it will be up on our YouTube, so you can, if you've just missed the sort of first 5-10 minutes because you were late joining, you can just pop in and replay that one. But again, we'd need to make sure that we've got your details to get that link out to you.
Similarly, Kim, as well, if anybody wants to be added to my mailing list, don't send many bulk emails, but about 4 times a year we send a newsletter which talks about local cases and relevant things that might be of interest. So if you did want to receive that, then just drop me an email and I can add you to the list. There was another question there, is there, Kim?
Thanks. So that was Trish just confirmed. It was just confirmation that the person that asked the original question has registered. So anybody that has registered, we have got their details. So that's absolutely fine. Can I ask a quick question? Oh, Rachel's trying to get in as well, but
Yeah.
whilst my mic is not on mute. So you'd said about raising awareness, Trish, is a really great way of like trying to reach people and cut down that 2.75 years until they feel like they can approach you. If you do have concerns about some of those red flags, have you got any tips for starting a conversation with somebody?
Yeah, absolutely. So it'll depend on what they present with and how they present. But if it is friends, for instance, if somebody says, you know, "Oh, I'm really skint this week because I've got to pay back my friend," asking a little bit more about that friend. So what would happen if you didn't pay that friend back is a really good one. Because if it's a genuine scenario and it was my friend Hannah, bless her, I always pick on poor Hannah, you know, if somebody said to me, well, what if you don't pay Hannah? I'd go, oh, well, she's a bit skint too, so I'd rather pay her because I know she's helped me out, which is very different to, no, I've got to pay back Hannah. I can't miss a payment to Hannah. So trying to understand a little bit about that. Does Hannah lend to other people is a good follow-up question. Have you ever missed a payment to Hannah, and if so, what happened? So to try and understand a little bit more about, is this a genuine friend situation or is this something else? If it is somebody who absolutely already knows that this is a loan shark debt and a situation, kind of asking, have you ever thought about getting some, you know, speaking to Trish, if it's in Leeds, or, you know, the illegal money lending team, if it's wider, whichever language you prefer, because it might be that they don't know about it. You know, if they say, oh no, I couldn't possibly do that, offering that reassurance that you do realise that you don't even have to tell them your name. You know, they might be able to offer you some guidance, some advice, some support. And I find that that's a far better approach than saying, report your loan shark to the England illegal money lending team, which just sounds terrible in my opinion. So yeah, hope that helps a bit, Kim.
That's really helpful, I think, Trish, because sometimes I think it is that kind of wondering how to broach a conversation, you know how not to, but
yeah,
I think sometimes it just feels tricky.
The other offer that is always there, not just for now, but at any point, is if you've got concerns about somebody, particularly somebody who you're going to speak to again, if you've got a follow-up appointment booked next week or whatever it is, drop me an email before and say, have you got 10 minutes so I can just have a chat, and we can talk through some more specifics and I can give some ideas about other things that might be worth trying. Thanks. Rachel, hi.
Hi Trish, thanks. Excellent presentation, as always. I was just wondering, how do you sort of navigate the sort of proactive versus the reactive approach in terms of being able to share as much information as you're able to with local partners to know that there's somebody operating versus, I don't know, so they could be on the front foot in terms of understanding who's operating?
Yeah, so I can never talk about an ongoing investigation. I can always talk general and I can talk specifics. I can talk about certain things, but not over the line. In terms of my priorities, my victim will always come first. So, for instance, Rachel, I seen you yesterday. If yesterday morning I had a victim that I needed, who phoned me as I was on my route to you, I wouldn't have made it to you in the same way as this session today. That is always absolutely the priority. If it is that I get some incident information about, we think there's a loan shark operating in Hunslet, for instance, that is information that I can share with local partners, because I'm not disclosing any victim, any individual. I'm just saying we've got reports that potentially there's a loan shark operating in this area. Can we all be on the lookout? Can we all be just refreshing ourselves on what those questions are, what sort of things, and not being afraid to open up those questions? You know, I talk about the fact that I was a debt advisor in my old role, and 20 years ago when I started giving debt advice, We didn't talk about mental health in any capacity. You know, we wouldn't have dreamed of that as part of a debt advice journey. 15 years ago, 10 years ago, we didn't talk about gambling. 5 years ago, we didn't talk about financial or economic abuse. Thankfully, those are all now conversations that people feel slightly more comfortable sharing. And I know in Leeds, I have spoke to victims who have disclosed to their medical profession that them or their family have been involved in that loan shark debt. So I think the health is a really key one for us, because it's almost a safe place, isn't it, to be able to share those concerns.
Thank you.
Apps, yes, we definitely do. We've got loads of resource, loads. You just let me know what you want and I can deliver it to you. So posters, flyers, pens, stickers, education packs, activity packs, a whole wide range. So yeah, please do just drop me an email and I can pick up separately with you and arrange for stuff to be sent. Is there a question? Is that hard?
Yes, it's just something from Angela that's put in the chat. So she wants to know what your contact details are, Trish.
Yep, so it's there will be on the slides as well, I think, but it's trish.cassidy, so trish.cassidy at Birmingham. I can never say Birmingham now, it sounded really Yorkshire. Birmingham.gov.uk. So drop me an email from there. You'll have my mobile number as well when I reply. Oh, thank you very much, Louise. There you go. It's much easier, wasn't it? So yeah, get in touch at any stage. Thanks. Any more?
Okay, I'm gonna draw this one to a close then. Trisha's details are in the chat. We will make sure that people get links to this plus the slides. So if you do think of other questions afterwards, then please do feel free to get in touch with Trish to push that forward. Massive thank you, Trish, again for giving up your time today and doing this webinar with us. I always do find it just so interesting when I've heard you talk on this, but I think also just knowing that there are things that can be done about it is so important. And I didn't know about your team until like our paths crossed, obviously, and we've been doing some of this work with local care partnerships. I think for everybody today, if you can make sure that you just try and get this message out to colleagues as well, just check out whether people are aware of the illegal money lending team, share the link with them, share resources with them, because I think it is that thing of, it is a safeguarding thing, and safeguarding is all of our responsibilities. We don't know when we might be the person that's in the right place to help someone with this. So I guess that's just my message, I suppose, I'd like to end the day with. And once again, thank you for giving up your time on this Friday. Hopefully people found it interesting. As I say, I know there's other people that are planning to watch this recording as well who don't work on Fridays, so we can hopefully continue to do our bit to push the message out as well.
Oh, thank you. Little virtual claps. Thanks very much. Have a lovely weekend, guys.
You too. Thanks very much, Trish.
Yeah, bye.
Bye, everybody.